Hello, hello, and welcome everybody to F1 2017 Failcast podcast. It's myself, Mr. Bolkenberg, who is no longer a Bolkenberg. He's now Rogro Frenchman, being angry and aggressive and quite miserable with every brake problem in the world. Alongside me, our taco friend has got some balls to suck.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Suck my balls, honey. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. It's always good to do a new season.
Definitely. Extra hype, extra excitement. We are this year... I feel like we need a drum roll to reveal our names before you can shout out.
I can't do a drum roll with my mouth.
What are we?
The Harseholes.
Woo! The Harseholes are in town.
Well, it's either that or half-arsed. We couldn't figure out the appropriate pun.
I think it'll be the half-arsed holes by the time we've crashed out at like lap 2.
I've even got the team wear. I dressed for the occasion.
Ah, boo. I know someone that works at Haas F1 as well. His name's Cameron, and he will be turning in his grave at all of these Haas puns because I don't actually talk to him with normal language anymore. It's just half-Haas puns. So he's very bored of me now.
It's the key to communication. Just want to make a quick shout out. After yesterday's discussion about retro arrows, I am drinking Power Horse.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that was still going.
I didn't know it was still going either. I was in the supermarket today and I thought that looks familiar. And now I remember mid-90s arrows, Power Horse.
Oh, and I was just watching clips of Ricardo Rosset being told that he wasn't good for F1 as well. So that is proper timely.
Well, it's good to be brutally honest. Shall we get straight into things? Do some F1 news and opinion and whatever it is we do.
Let's do it. So let's dive into this as well. Make sure we're all okay. So if people aren't familiar with the format of Failcast, if you're new, thank you so much for joining us. One of us this year with our new switch up is broadcasting on YouTube, which is me, High Playing Games, and then you've got Definitely Zero, streaming live over on Twitch, so don't forget to follow both so you can switch between the cars depending on who's crashing where.
Yeah.
But whilst we're driving ineptly, this is essentially a proper F1 podcast where we talk about news, views and opinions on past, present and future things, all to do with F1 and related topics. So don't expect too much talk about the game itself unless we're trying really hard or going horribly wrong. Expect more about F1 opinions, so that's what we'd like you to chat about, and don't forget you can pop your opinions in on the chats and we'll be able to comment on them live.
Lovely.
So what's first on your agenda today, Sir Definitely Zero?
Well, do you know, I thought, should we talk about, did you see quali in Belgium today? Should we go over that really quick?
Yeah.
Because after all the mockery we've given him in recent weeks and months, Jolyon Palmer pulled out a pretty solid lap, I thought.
He did.
Out of nowhere as well. I mean, if anyone needed it, it was him.
Yes, he's in desperate need of a turnaround form. And it was around Hungary-ish last year where it all started to come together and he was good thereafter. I don't know why it takes him half a season to get going again, but I hope that this is the start of a continued run because it's the first time that he's had the same spec Renault as Hulkenberg as well. So nice to be out qualifying all the way until the inevitable Renault Palmer problem. But still nice to see.
Well, it was the same. It was the same spec. Only his, devil in the detail. His was slightly more on fire. But it was the same last year, wasn't it? It took him half a season to get through, and Elias has chimed in perfectly on key here that after 10 races, it's not good enough. Which is basically why I was going to bring up next the fact that. It's great, of course, for the team if he can start bringing in points in the second half of the season, but is it too little too late? I mean, Renault is a team with a lot of options.
It is, and you can't... you can argue this year, probably more than last year, he's been horrifically unlucky and lacking a lot of track time. But it's difficult to kind of say, right, well... because we've continually screwed up on a car that wants to explode and catch fire and do all kinds of stuff, we're really sorry, but then when you do get in the car, we need you to be on form and not crash it. So it's like both sides of the partnership just haven't gelled for whatever reason, because he done quite well in lower formula, obviously GPT champion, stuff like that. But he would still not be, unless he's like this all the way till the end of the year and puts Hulkenberg significantly in the shade. I would still have about 4 or 5 other options above him, not least some of Renault's development drivers.
I mean, that's the real problem, isn't it? That even if he does switch it on, he's effectively already lost his seat in most people's opinion. I mean, you know, the buzz obviously that Kubica's coming back, maybe. Then you've also got the fact that Alonso appears to be messed up that lap. Alonso appears to be coming back onto the market again. You've got the young driver program, and of course, wasn't Ocon at one stage a Renault driver?
Yeah.
Because I know he's become a Mercedes driver in recently, but I'm pretty sure he was originally a Renault development driver.
Yeah, because he came from. No, I might be lying. I was going to say I think he'd done Formula Renault 3.5 at some point, but I may actually be talking out my bumhole. And that's kind of where the connotations lie, but also French.
Also French, yes. I think it's good that we bring that up now.
Yes. Key topic. Also French.
Now the thing is, of course, that it was a stellar lap, and he was ahead of Hulkenberg for pretty continually actually across the weekend so far. I believe in practice as well he was the Renault to beat. So it is a significant turnaround. I don't want to downplay his achievements here, but my issue really is that, as Elias correctly says, it's too little too late. You can't have a driver that's only firing on full cylinders half the season. And yes, while he has had the team's lion's share of reliability problems, he's also had the lion's share of screw-ups and failure to turn up during a race weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been some weekends where he's been absolutely nowhere. I mean, you just can't have that at this level.
No. And, I mean, he needs a good weekend. And I suppose for me, where you have him being, like, quite often a second off Hulkenberg, you've got Stroll being a second off of Massa, but everyone goes, oh, he's new, he's got no experience, he's very young. Jolyon doesn't have any of those excuses. He's already been around for a season. He's already had this kind of, I've come out the other side and I'm okay now kind of mentality. So you can only really have that once, and then afterwards, it's like the devil's snapping at your heels, waiting for the next time for you to fall, and then you just get eaten up into the proverbial poo bag.
Now, someone else who was looking impressive but didn't really get a chance to show his full deck of cards today was Stoffel Van Dorn. First home Grand Prix for him as well. I thought he looked pretty solid actually. He was beating Alonso quite comfortably.
Yeah, I completely agree. He was. I liked the return of drafting between teammates.
Yeah.
I feel like we haven't seen that since probably Monza last year, and it working successfully as well. So that was quite good. Yeah, shame that he wasn't able to show it. Then he's got a 65 place grid penalty, I believe. Anyway,
did he go to 65? This has to stop, hasn't it?
I just think there should be at some point where people just go, do you know what, we're not counting anymore. Because so one of the F1 websites that I use is GP Update, because there used to be an awesome forum on there, but they've taken it away now. And they were giving daily updates on what Stoffel's grid penalties were. So there was a different news article. So it started at 15, then it went to 30.
Sorry, Hulkenberg decided to just stop, really. To just stop. No, I mean, my point is, like, it's been going on for a few seasons now. This ridiculous levels of punishment in terms of grid penalties. Now, of course, you can't have teams just changing components willy-nilly. I completely agree on that front. You know, it doesn't do anyone any good to be having teams spending a vast amount of money changing components between every session. I completely see the point of having some sort of penalty in place to stop you doing that. However, I think there has to be allowances for reliability. I mean, we don't want to go back to the 90s where teams changed an engine just because. You know, it was quite commonplace that you would have an engine for quali, take it out, strip it down, put a new engine in for the race, just simply to avoid any potential reliability problems. Like, that should never be happening. But if someone clearly has a component expire on them in practice or in quali, I don't see how it helps the sport or the teams to be punished for that further than the failure itself. Do you know what I mean?
Do you not think grid penalties sometimes spice up a grid, or do you think that it actually gets in the way of a championship battle?
Well, I mean, I'm not outright opposed to the idea of having penalties on the grid for the changing of components. What I'm against is excessive penalties. You know, maybe they should be capped at 5 places or 10 places, and it should always be dependent, I suppose, on what component we're talking and under what circumstances it was changed. The stewards should be able to utilise a little bit of discretion there. I mean, of course, that leaves it open to abuse, and you know, we know how F1 likes to manipulate things in events to try and spice up the show. We know that happens. Let me check my tyre allocation here. I set a really good lap, actually. I could have gone faster, but I fluffed it because I'm me, and I always do. I've got another fresh set for Q1. Nice.
You're 3 tenths faster.
Than you?
Yeah.
Ooh. Smug face.
You're faster in sectors 1 and 3, and then I've got you in sector 2, but nice and close.
Let's take a look here. I honestly thought you were going to wipe the floor with me this season because you are much more familiar with the PlayStation controller than I am. Raikkonen splits us on the Super Softs. I have to say though, this
will be the last season that I'll be watching F1 out of principle.
Okay.
That's a controversial opinion.
That is a controversial opinion, Jay. Would you like to tell us why, so that we can then discuss it?
Yeah, please qualify that.
That'll take about a minute or two to come back, but I can already guess what the thing will be. I'm sure it's to do with a certain little angel headband.
I mean, don't be wrong. You know, the sport has its problems. I think Liberty Media are more prepared to address them than Bernie was, but I still think it's such a big enterprise. I still think it's going to be slow to turn. You know, like turning a container ship.
Yeah. Whenever there's so many moving parts into something, it's going to take way too long to kind of get it. Especially because, like with Ross Brawn and the appointment of him, immediately he was like, right, there's only a couple of things I can change now. I'm busy looking at what's going to happen in 2020. So we're like, oh, okay, nothing yet then.
Well, yeah, to be honest, we did think 2020, 2021 was when, if there was going to be...
No one wanted it unless you count stupid Italians.
Okay.
I didn't catch all that. Can you relay that message, Si?
Yeah, Jay says, Halo is an instant boycott. No one wanted it unless you count stupid Italians.
Actually, to be honest, I'm gonna semi-agree with you there, James, because I am not a fan of the aesthetics of the Halo at all.
When alternative facts on us, okay. I'd be interested actually to see, because like my cockpit mode that I've currently got running on this game at the moment, where I'm above the helmet. Quite where would that sit on an F1 2018 game with the Halo ring on?
Well, I'm more concerned about my own, to be honest, because I drive in actual cockpit view.
Yes,
and I'm gonna have a big thing straight across my line of sight. I assume the game will have a way to disable it.
shame that real life can't really have that, I guess.
Yeah, just
I,
visually disable it.
yeah, maybe that's why they're trying out all of the graphics and the sponsors on the grass, like where they CGI them in. They're just going to CGI out halos,
Hey, if the technology's there, man, I'd love to see it. I mean, for
run
me,
them in green screen.
I'm trying not to be too salty about the whole thing because it is the pinnacle of engineering, and I'm sure that I mean, I'm in the camp of people that would like to have seen a lot more work done on the aero screen before the Halo was decided upon, but likewise, Martin Brundle made a good point that it's a liability issue now. That if we, God forbid, had another Felipe Massa incident with a component striking a driver on the head, F1 now has a solution that would potentially have prevented such an incident, and by not using it, are they, guilty by neglect? That's something that Brundle brought up that I think is a very fair point.
Yeah, as soon as the can of worms was opened, it's almost like a door that every incident that would ever have happened afterwards. The problem with press and with I don't mean to sound negative, but like the social justice people and people who like that kind of stuff, it will be a lobbying group of how can you let this happen? Because I remember way back with 1994 when safety was at a mass. That's an interesting point. Yeah, I mean there are some downsides to that.
Big nearly had a big accident there.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so with 1994, when you had Senna and Ratzenberger obviously losing their lives. Then you went to the next race and you had...
Wasn't it Barrichello swallowed his tongue?
Yeah, Barrichello also had the problem. Then you had the pit lane problem with Minardi. Then you had Pedro Lamy had a massive Texan accident and broke legs.
That's right.
Then you had Cole Wendlinger in the coma. Then Andrea Montermini broke an arm. And so when it came to Wendlinger at Monaco, who was like the last in the line of that, and he was taken off in a coma, I remember the front page of the British press had a picture of him slumped in his car, and it was the title of the headline was "Stop This Murder."
Yeah, I remember that actually. Yeah,
it was quite a powerful thing to have going on because no sport had ever really kind of got into the public domain where everyone was just like, "This is now wrong." Despite 20 years earlier having dealt with the same problem where you'd lose someone every weekend. I mean, we've progressed that much now, but it's the same problem. As soon as someone says, I think we should have head protection and here's a solution, no matter how shit it would be, F1's then put into a position where commercially and legally it's fucked. So I kind of get their point as to why they're stuck sometimes.
Reminds me of the iPhone Type 21 single central mirror. I'd imagine it'll be very distracting, as it's right in the driver's line of sight.
Thank you,
I would have thought the same thing actually. I'm surprised the drivers that tested it were reporting that it was far less of a problem than you would expect. I didn't expect them to feel that way actually. I thought there'd be a lot of very valid complaints that it was blocking their view. I mean, it's one of those things, right? Like closed cockpits. I spoke out about closed cockpits when they were first being mooted, saying, well, it's an idea that will be absolutely excellent until a driver gets trapped in a car upside down.
Yes. And if it's on fire and they can't get out, and then the injury is caused by that.
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing with the Halo. I think the Halo will be something that is lauded and seen as a necessary evil, right up until the moment that the lack of visibility causes something else to happen.
Yeah.
Now, what that might be, it depends really on what the line of sight is.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's interesting to hear the current F1 drivers and how split they are on the decision, and how some people are still saying quite aggressively, notably the Haas guys, that they don't like it at all. In fact, I'm sure that would have been another time to shout out the "suck my balls" moment for K-Mags. Shots for sucking.
Actually, I just want to say, Elias has made a good point that if you think about it, a driver's not always looking completely straight in the car because they look towards the apex. And I guess his point is that as the halo structure joins the structure of the remainder of the car, that actually it could block.
One of the F1 drivers to boycott.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That's a good point, Alex.
that is a good point, but also I think that the first driver that does boycott is a driver that very quickly finds himself without a team.
Yeah, yeah. It's too commercial to go out. I mean, when was the last time that a driver actually like boycotted anything at all? The only thing I can think of is when Prost came into the pits at the end of the really wet Australian race and was like, "I'm not doing that."
Yeah, I mean it's been a long time since anything like that's happened.
Yeah.
Um,
And a driver can never outrun the team. Remember Indy 2005, Coulthard, I want to race
Yeah.
if it's my decision. And they was like, no, come in. It's legally, you're screwed.
yeah, true. Just want to say we're being far too competitive.
Yeah.
Second
Yeah.
and third, that is a disgrace. That is a disgrace.
Mind you, we've yet to have to chain more than one lap together.
Well, to be honest, I don't feel too bad about it because given how nervous I am around other cars in this version of the game, that if I can have a front row start, then I'll absolutely take it.
Nice, nice.
What the hell happened
also
there?
go-
That we are suddenly 6th and 8th.
Oh, is that where it's quickly done, like everyone going across the line at the end? Yeah, I thought it would do.
Oh,
That's happened quite a few times for me.
Sorry. What do you say, Si?
I was going to say this has happened a few times for me, where there's been some really weird things post race where they've like zooped up everything. Look, Bottas is out.
Yeah, something isn't right here, is it? Yeah, Bottas with a 1:27.428.
Maybe, I mean, he might have got held up on traffic on his
It's
only
true
one
that
run.
You might lose your F1 job, but when you look at how much momentum Formula E is getting, it might not be the death sentence you.
That is very true, actually. We talked about this last season. You make a very good point, because my concern was that, fuel is going to run out. It just is.
Yep.
And eventually Formula One will need to move to a different source of power. And Formula E is already moving into that position as the pinnacle of engineering in terms of electric.
Glitch sim times are back.
Yeah, Formula E. I feel like Formula E maybe happened about 2 years too early for its own good.
Yeah.
But now it's actually perfectly positioned to be proper naughty and cause Formula One a real problem because they're too busy dilly-dallying.
They need
Their
to
move
up,
towards hybrid is interesting.
they need to up the engineering side of Formula E. I think there's still too much stock material in the cars, but it always was their strategy, year on year to sort of build it out to the point you became a full constructor over time rather than in the short term. I've got to say, I've got a lot of love for Formula E. I've seen 2 races live. Went down to the events.
Yes.
I thought they were very reasonably priced. They were very family friendly. A lot going on. Good support. Actually, the last one I was at was supported by a demonstration of Robo Race, which seems to me the most pointless, the most pointless innovation in motorsport. I don't think anybody will watch autonomous unmanned racing. At least that's the impression I get. But Formula E, I think, has the potential to really cause trouble for Formula One going forward, unless Formula One finds a niche in a different way. Like hydrogen fuel was a few years back a very interesting powertrain concept that hasn't really been developed yet. I'd like to see that actually. I think there's no point fighting between the series for control over battery power, but if you could have hydrogen fuel cell Formula One, that's
Formula E does
an
have
option.
things holding it back though. Stupid rules.
Oh yeah, I agree. There are definitely some stupid rules.
Yeah, get rid of the time limit for people jumping between cars, because if we have to jump between cars, I want to see drivers literally having to ballerina it out and like stack it, trying to get back in the car and being like having a proper like Taki Inoue moment where he runs himself over his own car trying to get out of it or something like that.
Yeah, more of that, please. I think what I'd like to see is a few slightly overweight Formula E drivers. I think there's definitely
Yes.
entertainment value to be found through drivers sort of being a little bit chubby and not being able to get their hands over the steering over the steering wheel to undo their own buckles. I'm totally into that.
I'd quite like to see, I don't know, like an elderly Formula E Motability car where you get like Alan Jones and Nigel Mansell have all like come back over time, and then like I don't know, Mansell has to get out his moustache to like block people.
Didn't they bring something similar to that back a few years ago? Wasn't there something like Formula
Formula
Masters?
Masters. Yeah,
I would
yeah.
have watched that if I'd known it was on when it was on.
Yeah, I think now ITV 97, the YouTube channel, whatever its current name is, still has one or two of those races up because it only lasted for 2 seasons, and in the second season hardly any of the races went ahead because it just didn't do very well. But yeah,
I
it was
can't understand
fun
that.
watching them.
I would have thought that would be something genuinely worth watching. Although it could be like, watching one of your favourite 80s or 90s rock bands and, they're just tired in the shadow of the former selves.
Engelbert Humperdinck being wheeled out on like
Yeah.
a defibrillator.
Exactly.
Spanish eyes. Like kind of kills over, dies on stage. Oh, I tell you what, who's being wheeled out for another year? Segue. Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah,
2018.
let's get on to that. Actually, that was another on my topic list for the day. Let me get your hot take on that decision.
Predictably boring,
Yeah,
but not necessary. But they were never going to put Charles Leclerc in there, as much as I'd love them to have. They're not going to put Rogro in there because he's going to upset the balance of our favourite Sebastian Vettel, who clearly wants someone who's a dependable number 2 who can keep him honest but not necessarily beat him. And I think Romain Grosjean is actually showing with his frustration at Haas and their brakes that he's not ready for a top team. So it kind of makes them go, right, we'll have a dependable 1 year, we'll put Charles Leclerc in a Sauber for 2018, providing he blows whoever's in that other
shit.
seat away, he'll be back for 2019 and then Raikkonen will go.
I'm gonna have to do another lap because I fluffed that at the end. I went out onto the gravel and nearly lost it. No, that's exactly what I said. Actually, there was absolutely no way Leclerc was going to end up in that Ferrari. Because, since when have Ferrari taken young drivers?
Yeah.
That said, I am a little bit surprised that they've chosen to keep Kimi, or at least that Kimi hasn't retired of his own volition. Now, you and I have been trying to force him into retirement for about 3 seasons now, and it's not because we don't love the guy. It's that Ferrari always seems to suck the oxygen out of him. Do you know what I mean? His fire goes out a bit there, doesn't it? And they've clearly shown this year that he's not going to be allowed to win if they can help it. As long as Sebastian Vettel is in the car and still in the race, if it's within Ferrari's power, Kimi Räikkönen will not win. And for most drivers, that would be enough to say, well, sayonara. I've taken the bollard out. Classic failcast. Now, of course, the big controversy that's come out of that, I suppose, is the idea that's being spouted around social media that a lot of people have said, well, this is Ferrari saying that, well, we don't want the Constructors' Championship before 2019. My comment on that, as it stands, is that actually they don't need the Constructors as much as other teams do, because they've got the money they get just for being Ferrari. This will be my in lap now because I've already put an extra lap than I wanted to on these super softs.
You're in supers, not ultras.
Yeah. Well, we had so much pace in Q1, I thought, why not?
Okay. We're different. We're differing strategies.
Always the way. I think I think for Ferrari, they've always been a driver's team rather than a team in and of themselves. Now, of course, they always expect drivers to sacrifice for the team. There's a certain culture at Ferrari that is sometimes their strength, sometimes their biggest weakness. That said, however, they really seem to find more prestige and value in winning the Drivers' Championship, and it's actually always been like that. If you go back to like the Schumacher-Irvine years or the Schumacher-Barrichello years, quite often you can see they've got this single-minded drive to get the Drivers' title, because I suppose that's the one with the most prestige anyway. You know, it's the one that's...
It's the one that's... Yeah.
In the
agree.
press.
It's the one that everyone remembers, isn't it? No one's like, oh, do you remember the year when Mercedes won the 2014 season? No, you remember when Hamilton won?
In 2019 would still be a stretch. Ferrari have never put young guns in the top team.
Yep, agree with that, Jane.
I mean, the thing is that, you know, you mentioned Rogro as well. He's got to be feeling pretty fucking annoyed, hasn't he? Because, you know, the rumour was long that he agreed to go to Haas on the understanding that it was a potential door into Ferrari. Likewise, 2 seasons ago now, it was said that Perez had an under-the-table deal to replace Kimi. And it seems neither of them, so far, are guaranteed that position. Now, I wonder if there's someone... Because we both concur, right? And I imagine most viewers of Formula 1 will concur that there's no way Charles Leclerc is going to end up in that Ferrari. So they're not going to be taking a unproven young driver. So, you know, maybe they're... because Perez is ready to take the step up. If Perez was going to get that seat, I don't see why they would re-sign Kimi. I think Perez has done more than enough to prove himself. So I wonder if there's someone else they're in the market for.
I don't think it will be Giovinazzi. I keep on hearing people say, "Oh, Giovinazzi will go in there." They will. They don't put Italians in an F1 car at Ferrari. They never really have done. They never will do, because of the pressure involved. Capelli crumbled under it. And
Fisichella crumbled under it.
One. Yeah, Badoer didn't really get a chance to crumble under it, but did anyway. Who else? Alboreto is about the only one that I can think of that was a regular Ferrari driver. It was Italian. And that's 80s.
Yeah. I'm just reading some comments here.
Oh yeah, go for it. There was a bug.
What happened there?
I thought it was what happened. So I came out the pits. Esteban Ocon was starting his fastest lap, but he stopped to wait for me to go past.
Leclerc to go to Force India in 2019.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Yeah, Ocon's got a 7.5 seconds time, is off the pace because he basically stopped on his formation lap to let me go on my out lap. Very weird.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, 7.4 seconds off the pace. No, Elias was saying that he could see them taking someone near to the... basically, if their drivers were near the end of their career, they could see them... if I'm understanding you correct, mate, that they would take a young driver if, you know, the options available were all near the end of their career. Yeah, in those cases, you've got to be practical, but I think a Ferrari driver ending up at Force India is a controversial opinion because it's pretty much a done deal now that Sauber is supposed to become the Toro Rosso to Ferrari's Red Bull.
And they've traditionally done that in the past. Because they used to have the Ferrari engine reband as a Patronus, didn't they?
They did. One year they actually ran essentially a Ferrari chassis, as I recall.
Yeah. Because if you think like Kamui Kobayashi came in as a Toyota driver, Toyota then escaped. He's then become associated with Ferrari ever since. Has been doing Ferrari drives elsewhere. Went to Sauber, that kind of stuff. So the kind of connotations have been there for quite a while. It's only been the last couple of years where they've been out in their wilderness that the association kind of got lost because Manisha Colton-Bourne could not have managed, I don't know, a piss up in a brewery.
But the other thing, of course, is that I think Ferrari saw Haas as their development team, but Haas have been notoriously reluctant to take Ferrari development drivers, and I don't know how long that relationship's going to last, actually.
No, it feels very, very business-like, not getting cozy with, like, if that makes sense. Because and the more that Gene Haas talks about, my return on investment is quite poor because there's such a big gap between the teams and there's so much money that it takes to get that little last second.
Yeah,
That's ridiculous. The more I think, well, your writing's on the wall, mate.
this is actually my next topic. But we'll wrap out Kimi first, and then I'll move on to Haas. Do you think we're safe? I'm not confident. I've got Verstappen, Hulkenberg, and Ricciardo are all among the people behind me. I'm in 6th.
I think I'm safe. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm not feeling particularly confident given that they like to put in cheeky fast laps, don't they? I'm going to risk it. I'm going to risk it, actually.
Super softs again, so he's not going to dive too much more. Ricciardo has not done a proper time yet either.
No.
Or Ricardo, sorry.
If only real life Kimi was still as fast as video game Kimi dude's been winning everything on F1 2017.
He is proper overpowered, isn't he?
He is. No, I'm going to stay in. It's a bit too late for me to get out anyway, but I'm going to stay in and risk it. And if I'm out for Q3, then I can do the talking while you do the qualifying. And I'll have first choice of tyres if I want to.
Fab.
So, I'm going to switch to the live feed. Are you out again?
No, I'm staying in.
Okay, then I will go on board with the magical Mr. Kimi, who apparently is 5th all of a sudden.
Second?
Oh no, I was 5th in the championship. So yeah, let's round out about Kimi then. We both agree he's not going to be replaced by a young driver. For me, regardless of, there's lots of logical alternatives to Kimi. It seems like a stopgap move for something that we haven't fully understood yet. I still can't imagine what option they're seriously considering that would make retaining Kimi another year make sense. It does seem a very odd decision, not least on the part of Kimi actually, but whatever, who knows, I guess the money's good.
Yeah,
I mean, rumour is of course that they want Ricciardo, and that would align because Ricciardo's contract with Red Bull is till next year, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe they want Daniel Ricciardo, it's long been a rumour. And also, let's not forget that everybody wants a bit of Max.
That's true, and I guess for me, the only block now for Daniel Ricciardo to go for Ferrari is Vettel is now confirmed there till 2020.
Yeah.
Bottas to replace Kimi says chimp. I don't think so, at all.
I'd like to see it actually. Oh, Lance Stroll in 4th.
Doesn't make sense. Does not make sense. Any of that. Nice weird times.
That is a horrific bug.
Oh, for goodness sake.
That is a horrific bug. Oh well, whatever. I will do the talking, you do the qualifying.
Faster. Yeah. Oh, well, why has Vettel gone a second faster as soon as it stopped? That's stupid. Stupid game. Boo. Oh well, we'll take back yesterday where we were saying that we've not come across any bugs yet, because now we are.
Yeah, now we are coming across bugs by the plenty.
It seems to be fine if you're playing in single player mode. It's all the online stuff that's got the bug in, I must say.
Right then, so I'm going to find out how to go on board with you once you're out. And let's move on to Haas then, something that we both wanted to talk about. So you've already alluded to it. Gene Haas was quoted in several media outlets discussing the disparity between his team and the cars at the front, that it feels insurmountable. Now, obviously, you hate to bust your bubble here, Genie Boy, but it is insurmountable because you are indebted to a works outfit. There's no way that you're going to be allowed to be in a legitimate position to beat Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is something that a lot of people within F1, within the media, warned him about when he said he was coming into the sport this way. That there are advantages in doing it using the Haas model, as it's now called, because of course you save quite a lot of money compared to funding your own entry.
Is it the half Haas model?
Yeah, the half Haas model. However, the fact is that if you're serious about competing, it is not the way to do it.
Agree.
Now, I'm just going to give you some sweeping camera angles.
Thanks.
My feeling, based on what he's saying now, is that this sounds very reminiscent of Tony Fernandez at Caterham.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
That he was talking like this sort of a year before he, was it the start of 2014 that he said, pull it together this year or I'm pulling out?
Essentially, yeah. I think 2013. I think when was like the writing on the wall, and then I think he acted on it for 2014, and it kind of, because wasn't it 2014 where it was then the trio trying to do it all by board of directors, and that just took them under.
Yes, yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It didn't work. I've just noticed as well that we are driving with the old Haas livery, the one you prefer.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I feel the same, Elias. I too am confused about what Haas are actually trying to achieve. I mean, I believe from the statements he's made and the fact he's come from the world of American sports in particular, is that he genuinely does want to come in and challenge for wins. But I don't think he understands, and I'm trying to be respectful to him here, because the guy has a pedigree in motorsport, but he doesn't have a pedigree in Formula One. And I don't want to patronise him, but I get the feeling that he didn't really fully comprehend how Formula One differs from something like IndyCar. Because in IndyCar, the kind of relationships he has with Ferrari are commonplace. You have your chassis built by Dallara, and you have your powertrain built by one of the official suppliers, and you can win on your own back. Formula One's never been that way, and I don't know how he thought it would go, basically buying everything off the shelf from Dallara and Ferrari. Now, it's gone better than Simon and I credited him with, to be fair, because we thought buying a Dallara chassis and someone else's powertrain was ultimately going to prove uncompetitive. Historically, it's never been a good plan. But credit where it's due, Haas have had they had a very strong first season. They've not disgraced themselves at any point. But from his comments, I do get the feeling that maybe the bills are starting to rack up, and he's not entirely convinced that this investment's going to work out the way that he'd hoped. It does again sound very reminiscent of Tony Fernandez with Caterham, that the bills were coming in, he thought that maybe the costs were too high, that the gap to the front was too large, it was insurmountable, and in the end he wound down the operation. I always saw Haas as a temporary project anyway. I think anyone who comes into F1, even using the Haas model, with too much of a business mindset, is going to end up being ultimately disappointed. There's very few F1 teams that, without the difference made up by sponsorship, are actually capable of sustaining themselves. You've got McLaren, Williams, Ferrari, Red Bull, who provide services and goods in different capacities that actually underwrite a large proportion of the company. Williams Advanced Engineering, they actually are a profitable business. McLaren is doing incredibly well in the automotive world at the moment. Additionally, they sell a lot of technology externally. I believe they provide quite a lot of components for Formula E, actually. So there's like a solid engineering business underneath. Haas does have his CNC tooling business, of course, which is how he's managed to get the money together to even attempt to enter Formula One. But I don't see the direct link to his business and Formula One that you see with stuff like Williams Advanced Engineering or McLaren, where there is crossover in terms of utility.
reminds me a little bit of. Do you remember when Paul Stoddard came in and was like, "Hey, I'm going to sponsor Minardi with my European aviation plane business," where there's no particular crossover either, and that confused me. And you're completely right about that whole stock relationship that you have in America, because when you look at NASCAR and IndyCar, the two biggest brands of motorsport that's over there, it everything is based off of stock products that you then spend what little budget that you do have tweaking little bits. And I think what he's misunderstood is the amount of money spent in Formula One and European circuits that are not stock based that gets you that little bit of an advantage, because everyone in IndyCar and NASCAR, it's just like split seconds of hundredths, not tenths or a second.
Yeah.
It's what it's like in F1, and the value of difference. I think for me, where Haas will come a cropper is where F1 then goes pay to view completely, and then you've got to wonder. You've then got to wonder what the return on investment is for a shrunk audience when you can meet the same kind of audience potentially with IndyCar and NASCAR combined for a fraction of the budget.
Yeah, I mean that's also another good point. I don't know necessarily that the benefit in terms of advertising on his own cars that he's getting is actually worth what it costs. The reason I say that, of course, is that by having his own team, he's already got access to that world. And we've talked about this before, that a lot of the incentive for a business to sponsor a Formula One team is that you get into that exclusive club. You're at these events, you're having breakfast and lunch surrounded by very influential people from the world of business and politics and everything else. Mm-hmm. And you can network, it's like LinkedIn for reality. You're in a room with people who have money, who have business connections, and you can take clients there and you can build business relationships around the glamour and the entire F1 world. I don't think he's getting any advantage out of being in F1. I don't want to criticise it outright as a vanity project. I do think he genuinely believed that he could shake up the market in Formula One, and he has, to be fair. There's a lot of argument to be made that, well, he's more competitive as a enthralled customer team than, a lot of, like, particularly Sauber is an excellent example, actually, a team that largely does everything by itself, has a wind tunnel of its own, develops everything with its own engineering staff. Mm-hmm. You have to work pretty hard to find justification for all that expenditure if Haas can come in and do it for a fraction of the cost. I completely accept that. But the point is that one day, Sauber could win. If the winds blow in the right direction, Sauber are perfectly capable. They're not so enthralled to Ferrari that, I say that from the viewpoint of today, we know that they're likely to become the Ferrari junior team, which may change things, but it's an interesting line there, mate.
Thank you very much. I was hoping you weren't watching at the time. I doff my cap.
No, I agree, Elias. They are doing a good job as a new team. My complaint with them has largely been twofold. One being that I think they buy so much off the shelf that it devalues the Constructors' Championship, which is the heart of the sport for me. My other problem with them has been that even though they are on occasion very competitive, I've always got the sense that when they're fast, they don't really understand why. I've always got the sense that they don't have the same intimate knowledge of the machinery that the other teams have, because the other teams are intimately involved in its manufacture and construction. Whereas with Haas, I don't know how much assembly Dallara does, or whether they just provide the car in almost kit form, but I would assume
team to start off as well as they did in 2016 with Stewart. The issue is that with...
Yeah, completely. Stewart was, for me, the last true entrant in Formula One that was viable.
Yeah.
But I'm also, Stewart did everything right. He targeted the underwriters very specifically. So he wanted he had a blue chip vision for a Formula One team, which is very ambitious. Fortunately, he's very good with people, and he's got the pedigree in the sport. He's got the connections. Obviously, he had great connections at Ford anyway. He was Ford powered during his successful years. So he went out there and he partnered with people like Learjet, HSBC, and he was able to get not just a large operating budget, but the engineering expertise of Ford, and he had a team in junior formulae. He was taking the route that teams like Tyrrell, Minardi, March, Brabham had taken into Formula One, which is prove yourself successful in the lower formulae and then take the step up.
Yeah.
Become a racing team outright. Don't become a business trying to branch into motorsport and then try and make it profitable, because it doesn't work. Paul Stoddart admitted that when he initially wanted to buy Arrows, he also wanted to buy Jordan. He was very keen to get into Formula One for a few years before he did. He came very close to buying Tyrrell as well. And when he finally did buy Minardi, he, by his own admission, had attempted or considered buying 4 Formula One teams, and every single time he'd been told by his accountants that it doesn't make sense.
I've gone from 4th to 7th, even though I've completed... this bug's annoying me already.
Yeah, it is very annoying. Lance Stroll put in a hell of a lap there, though. 125.6.
Good old Lance. Never mind.
Yeah, exactly, Elias. Yeah, it shows they don't know what they're doing because they can't get on top of the brake issue. That's very true. Although, there is an argument to be made that it doesn't affect K-Mags, so it might be just something down to the way Roman uses the brakes. But if they can't help him develop his braking technique, by looking at the data and understanding it, then that explains a lot. Although he hasn't been complaining of brake problems in Spa, has he?
No, but and they've not really been massively competitive at Spa either. I think Frogro is also Frogro, as I like to call him, Frogua. He's almost a victim of FIA's desperate willingness to put out controversial radio messages at all times.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like
he's good value
Roman,
for money.
He is good value for money. He's good for getting on-air time, even if it is just for him going, it's the brakes. But
like a bloody idiot with the podium. Oh wait, I was always the bloody idiot.
Yes, Jeff. What was I going to say? So with Romain Grosjean, I always get the impression that he could probably be having sex and still sound like he was hating every minute of it.
He is a miserable fuck, isn't he? He's got the Paul de Resta about him.
Yes. I was getting really annoyed. I was watching the a mini. So, quick, get off that because that will block it. Thank you. I was watching the F1 show on Sky, and they were all buttering up to Paul de Resta, going, "Oh, you've done so well, which, to be fair, he did, and all of that stuff. And they're like,
he did.
Are you ready to replace him? Because Massa crashed out in P1, and I think it might be because he's got vertigo again. No, he just crashed.
He just crashed.
Like, are you ready? Are you ready, Paul? And he's like, maybe. He goes, but I'm here talking to you now, so I don't think I'm racing. Like, but you might be. And he's like, no. It's like he'd flatlined already in the interview.
Now here's a question. Higher tyre management does appear to be faster, according to the analysis here, by about 5 seconds. But
yes.
I think there's a lot to be said for 2 stints on the Ultrasoft.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to go for any of these pit strategies at all. I've got to start on the ultra softs anyway, and it's telling me to go for 2 super softs. But I might go. I quite fancy ultra soft. I don't know. And I find that the tyres do last longer around here.
Yeah, I mean, I've not had any particular concerns with tyre drag, to be honest, and I've often felt, at least, that the benefit of being on the faster tyre can, at least it feels like it can negate the extra pit stop. But then again, I don't know. It all depends how the opening laps go, right? Because
yeah,
I wonder if I might try starting on the ultras
We are Failcast for a reason. We normally get this.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I found when I was doing because I'd done a 100% race last night, was that there was like a weird part halfway through my tyre management where it got to about 45%. And it was like I had to mentally adjust in my head because I had 2 or 3 really terrible laps. And then once I got used to the fact that the grip was no longer at its premium, I was back to being quite fast again. But there was like a real specific switch for me. And that happened on all my tyre stints.
Ah, mate, I'm confused here.
Anyway, highly expand your vocabulary, PLS.
At least they've gone aggressive with the tyres at Spa. We might actually see more than one pit stop.
Oh, to answer your question, Elias, we're on 50% race.
Ah, yes. Good shout.
Okay, my new strategy is apparently almost 10 seconds slower than the high tyre management.
That's why it's the right one to go for.
But right, it's saying here that I should pit on lap 12. I'm getting 12 laps with the super softs. So if I go ultra soft,
I wonder if did we do scaled tyre wear?
yeah, I think so, didn't we?
Okay. Because that would make more sense as to why these tyres are not lasting anywhere near as much as what I was thinking they would.
Right, I'm going to do my own stupid strategy, and if it's wrong, then it's wrong. But the thing is that
Same.
I want to make my first stint short because I've got a feeling there's going to be a massive accident into turn 1, and I'm going to have to come in and change my wing. So I might as well.
You've got a feeling that you're going to be involved in that crash into turn 1.
Yeah, because I've got so little experience in this with this handling model and drafting cars behind. You saw it yesterday in the stream actually that I went into the back of a few cars even though I broke early. So I'm going to be. I mean, I'm not too worried because I know Elias isn't actually watching; he's just listening. So, but you know, I'm going to be driving chicken shit.
Uh-oh. Oh
Right.
well, people don't come for the racing; they come for the F1.
That's something that a lot of people don't understand, though. That it's an F1 podcast, and the game is purely tangential.
Yeah,
but
it's
whatever.
purely bants for us to be terrible at.
Well, since we've been talking about mystery signings and whatnot, shall we talk about what the hell's going on with Daniel Kvyat?
Where is Daniel Kvyat?
50th chance of crashing on lap 1. It's either going to happen or it isn't.
That's true.
Formation
I like
lap.
that optimism. Good, I'm glad there's no technical problems, Jeff. More updates. Jeff either can hear everything I say or says nothing at all. There's no... It's like a wife that I've never had.
He does seem very weird in this version of the game, actually. I read an interview with the guy who programs him who said, oh, he should be a lot less annoying this time, but for me, he's largely absent, actually. Which I suppose is the same
annoying,
thing.
Maybe, but yeah. I like having Jeff around, I just want him to be useful.
But yeah, let's talk Daniel Kvyat. Real F1. Real F1, that's what we're here for. Now, obviously, he's been re-signed by Toro Rosso, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why, given, Red Bull contracts are generally pretty watertight, so the obvious explanation is they're worried about losing Verstappen or Ricciardo at some point in the next year or two, which, for a lot of people, that's a legitimate concern, but it is notoriously difficult to get out of a Red Bull contract, and I don't see what benefit they gain necessarily by keeping Kvyat and leaving Gasly on out in the cold.
No.
Surely, surely if you're going to be losing one of your top drivers potentially, you want your 2 best young guns in the Toro Rosso, so you can decide who's replacing them.
Yeah, I guess for me, if they're thinking that, especially I think the Ricciardo to Ferrari being probably the most likely of the 2 that go, I suppose, is that Sainz is the one that gets the auto replacement up, so long as Toro Rosso actually will still like him, because he's like the child that's been locked in the cupboard under the stairs in some kind of weird mid-afternoon Sunday Channel 5 drama show. If they actually give him the benefit of the doubt and just brought him up, I suppose whoever they bring in, they need to put up against Kvyat to ensure that they beat him, so that Kvyat then goes. That's about the only reason why I can think, because Kvyat has been so anonymous for me this year, despite some good drives, but they're not translating to anything point worthy. Whereas Sainz is having the battle of the Spaniards every weekend and getting points home when he can bring it home. And it's been, I was annoyed that not annoyed that he got the seat, but I understood why. But he's just not justified it at all for me.
No, he hasn't. Although I did read in Autosport that actually his super time compared to Sainz is actually very marginal. So he does have the pace.
Ooh, sorry, Strong.
Oh, God.
Oh, there's a big crash behind me, and it wasn't me.
Yeah, it's taken my front wing.
Oh, no. Hamilton, Vettel, Raikkonen, me and Stroll were the only 5 that got through that. Lance for a podium.
And now my brakes are all shot again and I can't turn properly.
Oh no. Failcast for a reason.
Yeah, but this time it wasn't actually our fault. Like, Alonso drove into me twice while we were stood still, which is pretty impressive.
Kvyat's been the opposite of anonymous this year, though. Mostly due to crashes.
Do you think he's Kvyat actually off the back of that comment? Sorry, I can't see who's typed that in because I was going into the chicane. Do you think he's earned the reputation rightly of being the Russian missile?
Yeah, I do. Right, I have to cut that corner. I'm coming in. This car's undrivable without this wing.
Oh no.
Confirm change. That's my race over, guys. You can't recover from a first lap pit stop, in my humble opinion.
There might be a safety car yet, you never know.
Elias was asking which positions we are in. I am in 14th, but I'm about to pit. Where are you, Si?
I am 4th.
I hate you a little bit.
Okay, teammate is in the pits.
No one else is, though. I'm surprised. There was some pretty big coming together there. So I'm going to be about 30 seconds off the back of Verstappen. Guys, if you want to see some actual racing, you can join Simon on board at youtube.com/higherplanegames. It's the same podcast, but you'll be able to watch it from the perspective of someone who's actually in the race. I'm going to be tooling around on my own for quite a while now, unfortunately. So that's youtube.com/higherplanegames, all one word. And Simon will curate you round 4th position while I put around at the back here. Yeah, for me, I think Kvyat has earned his reputation. I do take the point that Autosport raised, which is that ultimately his pace relative to Sainz isn't exactly terrible. But
no.
But ultimately, he does feel like dead weight. The same way Palmer's felt like dead weight. Now, Elias mentioned that he should get out of the Red Bull shadow and maybe try and find himself again. I agree with that, but I don't think he's really got anywhere to go. I think his reputation is so sullied.
I think Kvyat
Yeah.
got it rough. Rougher than Jeff even. The freak demotion sapped everything out of him.
Yeah, I mean, the demotion doesn't help. I feel like Red Bull don't understand morale, ever. Or, well, maybe not Red Bull. Dietrich Mateschitz doesn't understand morale, because the clue's in the surname.
I braked far too hard there. Carry on.
Dietrich is such a moose, essentially. And if you've not got that kind of mentality, and Kvyat is the kind of guy who will sit and cry on his own watching a chick flick with a bottle of Merlot in an evening. You can see it. And that's not the kind of mentality that's going to help you at Red Bull. he's the kind of guy that would do really well maybe at Williams or something like that.
I did actually
Where
think he would be a good Williams driver, to be fair, but even if I was Sir Frank, I wouldn't give him a chance at this point.
no, it's gone too far, and it's got bloody minded to the point where he's like, oh, I'll just do my driving my own way. I don't know why he's gone Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah,
That was his. Get to the chopper. That's what would happen if Toto Wolff and Danny Kvyat had a love child. Yeah, it's not grand, I must say. And I'm surprised that he's back for next year, and he won't be in F1 beyond that. Is my prediction.
I mean, it's particularly frustrating because it's a year that F1 doesn't need to keep dead weight around.
No,
there is
too
so
few
much
seats.
talent out there.
Exactly, too much talent, too few seats, and too many people stocking up the wave. Hang on, what does it want to do?
Right, my gap to Verstappen is 20 seconds.
Keep current.
A little bit more than 20 seconds now. I've run wide like that. Well, this
just happened at the very back.
Yeah. Well, this turned around quickly, didn't it? Considering I looked to be on course for a front row start, I end up starting 13th. And then a first lap, first corner incident puts me to the back by 20 seconds. I feel like a arsehole.
Ah.
I don't know what I did there. The thing is, like, I know now from... I've done my first 3 practice sessions in career mode, and I know how important it is to take turns 11 and 12 as fast as you dare. And it means sometimes I get a bit creative with the lines, but really it can make or break your lap.
Absolutely. I was losing half a second there before I took a slightly different line in. That sounded like a rumble strip from your side.
Well, you know, gotta ride the curbs, gotta do a Hakkinen. Believe it or not, I'm gaining on Max Verstappen by 2 seconds a lap. Which means by lap 15 I should have just caught the back of the end of the grid.
Love it.
And I still have to stop again. It's bullshit. Now, Liberty Media have been talking about efforts to boost the grid. They're saying they're not seriously considering tenders till the formula for 2020 and beyond is decided. But they are still committed to a larger grid, ideally 14 teams.
Nice.
And I was quite heartened actually to see, you know, some sources within there referencing the early 90s where it was very easy to have a full grid. And in fact, the grids were so large that you had to have pre-qualifying. They were very clear that they don't want to move back to days like that where, you know, you've got a million teams and most of them never race. But they do want a full grid of 14 teams eventually. They feel, for now, that 12 teams is a more achievable goal. But ultimately, 13, 14 teams is where they want to be. I would love to see that. Not now,
I feel
Jack.
like it's pie in the sky
Yeah,
to get to 14 at the moment, unless there's some significant cost reductions or stable rules that means that actually you're spending less to try and gain less, if that makes sense. I don't know.
well, I know Cosworth are part of the working group now, as are Aston Martin.
Nice.
For the engines, and I know Red Bull are lobbying very hard for a return to affordable, simplified engines. Presumably because they want to get out from under the umbrella of Renault, which they've been itching under for quite some time. Now, I for one would love to see Cosworth back.
Yep.
And Aston Martin are talking about being involved in F1 in a more concrete way. They don't just want to be a name on the side of the car, which I have a lot of respect for that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
realistically, I don't expect to see them realistically enter as an engine supplier, although that's the sounds the CEO was making. I think it's more likely that they'd maybe partner with Cosworth and badge the Cosworth as an Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Or maybe, get someone like Ilmore or Judd involved.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's part of the key, isn't it, really? To get more engine suppliers in there and to find a way. I mean, I think we're very quick to dismiss the idea that F1 can sort of become big and sustainable, but at the same time, if you look back to particularly the mid to late 90s, where we had a full grid, but we also had a ridiculous number of engine suppliers that were all viable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was only Minardi really that was frequently running with an engine that wasn't fit for purpose. I mean, if you think back to sort of 98, 99, Ford was perfectly viable. There was no shame in having a Mugen Honda unit. There was nothing about a Peugeot in particular that would hamper a team. In fact, at different points during the season, different engine manufacturers had the most powerful engine on the grid. I mean, Honda did 2 stretches, I believe, with the Mugen units that they were the engines with the optimum power output. Likewise, Peugeot at one stage had the most powerful engine on the grid. And this was at a time where spending was pretty much unrestricted. I mean, teams had T-cars present at the race. They were bringing 3 chassis to each Grand Prix. If it was sustainable then, I am curious about what has changed so drastically to make even a shadow of that seem unrealistic to us today. Now, before you answer that question, does it look to you like we might be getting some rain later in this Grand Prix?
It has got very dark. I was wondering if because we're running the official times, obviously it's late in the evening, isn't it? Because we're at sunset. Pretty much.
That's true, yeah.
Weather report. Radar is clear, says Jeff.
Yeah, well, he would say that, wouldn't he? Half the time he doesn't know
Message
which
will
of
be
us is on
rain,
which tyre
15
strategy.
That was the killer.
Which position are you in, Si? Just so we can keep Elias in the loop.
12th.
You're 12th now.
12th.
Have you
Yep,
stopped?
I popped in for my first stop.
Oh, well, that's very disheartening that you've stopped and I haven't caught you.
Okay. Well, I'm now on super softs, and then I'll have one more stop later on, and decide if I'm going to go super softs or ultras, depending on my tyre wear.
That said, I don't regret having stopped because, once I had a full front wing again, I could definitely feel how it would have been stupid to stay out for the full length of that ultra soft stint.
Good man.
I can now see cars ahead of me on the mini-map,
Hey.
but I know I'm not too far away from having to stop.
That's alright, loads are in now. So, hybrid technology, because F1 adopted it so early, and it's very much like a conceptual design, is really expensive. So that's why I think T cars have kind of become a thing. I kind of miss not having a T car. I think it's a detriment to the sport if like a car breaks down on the formation lap and then they're out automatically. I'd like to see a T car, even if it is just for like a race start and you don't necessarily touch it particularly beforehand, and it sits there and is just left alone. But what F1 teams are saying is that essentially running a third car, you might as well just have a fourth, because it takes so much to get running. Don't necessarily get that if you don't necessarily need to tweak it and run it all the time.
On track to try and get a safety car asterisk.
What is this, NASCAR? We're not. Someone's suggesting we should throw debris on track to get a safety car to get you in.
I'm actually now 19th and I'm behind one Mr. Nico Hulkenberg.
Oh, who did you overtake?
Kvyat, but only because he stopped.
He was just in front of me when he came in. What was I going to say?
I've got the Durs though on Hulkenberg, but he's definitely got the legs on me. He's on a faster compound tyre as well, so I don't know if I can actually effectively race him. But it's okay because if the multiplayer bugs that other people have been reporting show their face, we're going to get disqualified anyway. So
it's all it's all in the best possible days.
I went a little bit deep there trying to catch Nico.
Instead of 14 teams, would you actually? That's a good question. 14 teams or 10 3-car teams?
14 teams every time.
Agree.
Every single time. I think very few teams would become more. I also don't feel the sport will become any more entertaining by teams like Ferrari fielding 3 cars. I don't think it helps anything. And also, to me, it makes survival of the smaller teams even more unviable.
Yeah. That's exactly why I would go 14 teams. It needs diversity in that kind of regard.
To be honest,
Otherwise, it will be a 16 championship.
Oh, that was very naughty of me. It was an illegal overtake, and it was as well. But go through then, you twat.
Ooh, Perez is pitted and put on the softs. He's going to try and go to the end.
The AI is a little bit funny there. I backed off to let Hulkenberg back through, but because I slowed down on the racing line, which to be fair was my fault, he just sat behind me, and I was still going to get the penalty. So all that work I did catching the cars in front is now moot.
No.
But again, once I'm following cars in front, it's strange. The game really does simulate the drafting effect, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
suddenly my brakes don't do anything. And I had to go on the grass to avoid a collision. And because of that, I got an illegal overtake, which, it was. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, the drafting effect is real in this game.
I've just gone
simulated
fastest of
very well
anybody
between-
through Sector 1.
Oh, so did I. You must be in a charge, sir.
I am, because I don't want to finish last.
You can do it, dude. You can do it.
And the thing is, apart from that one incident there, I actually feel like I'm driving okay. I'm being pretty clean this Grand Prix. Yeah, I mean, I think F1's in a very difficult position right now because they're on the cusp of, they've committed now for a few years to hybrid technology. Mercedes put out a statement the other day saying it's actually finally starting to come down in price, and they're going to be reducing the cost of their powertrains to customers.
Nice.
But at the same time, they're concerned because now the technology is starting to become a bit more proven and it's actually starting to come down in price. The sport is considering dropping it.
Oh.
Pascal Wehrlein is holding up Nico Hulkenberg, which is a knock on the door of opportunity for your old pal Esteban.
Is it getting taco time?
Absolutely.
I've just got round Bottas and Massa.
I lost it.
He's Carlos Sainz.
To be fair, Hulkenberg did fight me very cleanly there. There's not really a great overtaking position on this track with the cars being this wide.
No, I've done turn 3, the corner at the end of sector 1.
Hybrids now that they've made the move. In this age of climate concerns, the outrage will be immense.
It
Right,
would.
let me
actually,
through,
that's
Hulkenberg.
that is a very good point, Jay. Is that again, with just like the Halo, there's like a social conscious problem that F1 has now. Oh shit! Hit signs. I think that's my front wing gone now as well.
Double overtake. How are my tyres looking? They don't feel so great. Oh, actually, they're holding up alright. They are overheated though.
Come on, Carlos.
Yeah, Elias is saying there's no way F1 will ever become cheap. I completely agree, mate, but I think what they're looking at for 2020 and 2021 is to make it cheaper. And the question is, do we now wait for hybrid technology, which is more relevant, to the car manufacturing world and is likely to be more attractive to car manufacturers, even though it doesn't seem to be panning out that way right now. Do we stick with that and hope the price comes down enough to make the whole endeavour worthwhile? Or do we instead go back to cheap V8 units, which is what Red Bull are advocating for, and hope that that inspires enough entries to spice things up? My concern with that would be that having more entries doesn't necessarily matter if there's no car manufacturers or engine suppliers worthy of the name that are willing to get involved. You close the door on me, you little prick.
I just had the most weirdest freeway into turn 14, ever. Well, it was a four-way really, but Massa had just got ahead. That was scary. How we've all come out of that, I've got no idea.
The AI are quite scary in this, aren't they?
Yeah, they're quite bolshy, which I like, but they are also quite. I'm finding that they're slightly more predictable.
Damn you, Bottas. Damn you all the way to Hades.
Oh, that was who I was just with. So you're exactly a pit stop behind.
That's good for me. I'm currently sat in 11th position. Where are you?
I'm just having a go at Massa for 4th.
Oh, so you lost out in the pit stops then?
Yeah, Massa's started on the softs. He's not pitted yet. So I'll be back there again, but I feel like my strategy is the wrong one.
Everything we do here is the wrong one.
I feel like the soft tyres were the way to go.
Actually, I have to say, the yellow wool tyres are working very nicely for me.
I'm fully expecting natural aspiration to become instinctive racing soon. Even NASCAR will be running turbos.
I agree with that sentiment, actually. It does seem like natural aspiration is on the way out.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit disappointed by that, but I think it's progress, right?
Yeah. Sadly, the world is a little bit. I don't, because otherwise, like Formula One, we were saying this when we was doing this 2016 stuff. Formula One's at this like crossroads now, where it needs to decide if it's going to try and become, if it's going to hold on to the past, and try and give this whole like specific sport thing, or to stay real world and relevant. It can't like do this balance of the both, because it kind of leaves you in a little bit of no man's land. And Formula E's already cornered like the will be relevant, so it's a Formula One, do we go with that and also be relevant, but take our massive audience with us, or do we go for a look at us, we're going to be the biggest, beefiest, meatiest engines possible, but therefore not necessarily be what a manufacturer will want to go for?
Yeah, I mean, I still see a lot of people advocating for return to V8s or even V10s or V12s. And don't be wrong, I love them as much as the next man, but I think you would be ultimately dooming the sport. I mean, no one sits here and says, oh, wow, those quiet V6 hybrid turbo units really do spice the show up. You know, they are super exciting, aren't they? Look at all the buttons you have to press on the steering wheel. Yeah, I agree, no one gives a shit about that sort of stuff. But at the same time, you have to accept that they're trying to think about the sport 10, 15, 20 years from now, where, you know, at that point, it will be totally unviable to have a V8 or V10 unit in the back of a car. And other series may have actually stepped up to challenge Formula One's position at the pinnacle of motorsport. You know, nobody wants that. Whoa, what am I doing?
What are you doing?
That was a horror. I got caught out by the drafting again. It was very dirty of me. I went into the side of a Renault, but I got away with it scot-free. Yeah, I agree, Elias, actually. Yeah, the prize money does have to be distributed differently. And I think Liberty Media are more willing than most people in Formula One's senior positions historically to take a look at that. But at the same time, that's a period of turbulent change, isn't it? Because you do risk upsetting some of the more established teams. The heritage payments, for example. I think there's a moral argument to be made for taking a look at those and removing them, but at the same time, that would possibly put teams like Williams at risk. It would upset the balance again of Formula One, and you might see some teams take their balls and go home. Suck my balls, honey.
Shot.
Yeah, had to get one in. So, I think Formula One is in a very difficult position, and the decisions that it makes in the coming 2 years are going to define whether the sport survives at the top of the motorsport food chain.
Mm-hmm. No, completely agree. Completely agree. And I know everyone, like, the interwebs does like to make a drama of, oh, this next decision will be crucial to its survival. But when you look at where the world is going, just in general, in terms of motors, sustainable fuels, fossil fuels being like considerably told it's bad, I feel, and basically whatever Trump does then, or whatever Trump then says is like hell for the rest of the world. You're right, because there's such a it's an interesting political landscape to take a look at Formula One outside of Formula One, if that makes sense. Because I don't feel like real world politics has ever played such a huge part in a sport before, like in our Formula One, on this scale.
Well, I mean, that's actually a very good point, right? Because Formula One is at the whim of a lot of the suppliers, right? And if it becomes very strongly politically and economically disincentivized to produce thirsty engines or to be using fossil fuels, then there's no need to refine that technology within the world of motorsport anymore.
No.
And it doesn't matter how fun or exciting racing with naturally aspirated V10 units is, it's just not going to be something that any company has interest in doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I agree with you, there are a lot of people who like to play doom-monger and be very dramatic, but this is one of the very rare occasions that, you know, like the old Concorde disagreements in the mid-2000s, it is an event that's so significant for the sport that it really does matter which road Formula One chooses to take in the next few years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do one more lap and then I'm going to come in. Because I don't like the way those tyre percentages are winking at me. I think anything over 50%, you actually start to get a little bit nervous.
I've not gone with the tyre. I've not played with a tyre run to see when it pops. So my left front has just hit 50%. I was going to pit this lamp as well, but I think we're significantly far enough apart to be all right.
Yeah.
Ultra softs.
Oh, someone's getting a bit racy up in here.
I'm having a competitive moment. Just the one. Got Hamilton behind me, currently sitting in second, but I do need to pit.
Are you first?
No, I'm second.
What are you doing? For shame, Simon.
Raikkonen and Hamilton have done their final stops and are right up my jacksie. So, are you in the pits now, or not?
No, I stayed out. I've realised that I can probably make these tyres last till lap 22 and then slam on the ultras.
See, that's what I've just done, is basically go 2 laps past my pit box and then switch to ultras. Because I'm going to come in now and do 9 on the ultras.
Elias says get back where you belong, Simon. I couldn't agree with that sentiment anymore.
I'm sorry.
You know, the other thing, of course, is that I think the people complaining about hybrid power and the way Formula One's had to go for political and economic reasons, I think they're neglecting that there's also a lot to be happy about in Formula One right now. I mean, I don't recall a year recently where you've had such strong attendance figures at so many Grand Prix.
Hang on, it's put on a used set of Sultra Softs, but I've got a fresh set. Wanky.
Amazing. There you go. That's your karma. That's what you get for overachieving.
Ah, lovely. Bollocks. Never mind.
This setup is being incredibly kind to my tyres. Incredibly kind. I couldn't quite finish the race, but I wouldn't be far away. I was tempted to do a Sergio Perez.
Who is doing a Perez, actually? He's up in 5th on the soft tyres.
That cheeky rascal. So yeah, I mean, what I always caution for really is from the unhelpful nostalgia. You know, you and I in particular are huge fans of 80s and 90s F1 in particular, and I do get very nostalgic for F1. But I think there's a fondness sort of nostalgia, and a nostalgia that's somewhat more unrealistic. And I think we have to take a pragmatic view of the sport.
Yes.
Part of me actually wants them to keep the hybrid V6s, just because they're starting to finally come down in price, which makes the whole drama around switching to them make sense.
Is the two-player career mode even in the game?
Yes. Sorry, bear with me a sec. Yes, this is a two-player co-op championship. You can watch Definitely Zero over on twitch.com/Definitely Zero if you want to have both of us on your screen at the same time. But it's primarily an F1 podcast, but we like to drive semi-retardedly and have fun. Oh Christ, nearly crashed. Whilst saying that.
It's good that you're demonstrating what we're all about. Welcome, by the way, if you are new.
Yeah, welcome. Lovely to have you. Lovely to have you all with us. It's great. This is our first year. We've been doing this for 8 years, and this is the first year that we're doing it live, and I'm loving it.
Me too, actually. I mean, as long as I forget that we are live, it's not a problem.
Yeah, sorry about that. We're as live. Let's do that.
Yeah. But when I do recall that I am live, I tend to overdrive and make a lot of mistakes. It's performance anxiety. I just cut that corner really shamelessly.
Such a male thing. What was I going to say? What was your question before that came in? Sorry, I've forgotten now.
So we were talking about the sort of nostalgia that people get for, you know, the older power units, the
Yes.
noise, the fire and brimstone. Now, of course, the hybrid units are starting to finally make sense financially, or at least they're starting to come down in price. And, you know, Formula One has to decide what the formula is going to look like 2020 onwards. And my argument was that they have to move with the times for the sake of the sport. But there is definitely an argument to be made that the show is more enjoyable to watch with the V10 and V12 units. That, again said, I was making a point that Formula One seems in generally quite rude health, actually. I've noticed this year that attendance figures have been seemingly quite strong, mainly down to Max Verstappen, but it also shows that when a good battle is happening, when overtaking is happening, people don't care what the cars sound like or what unit's in the back.
Exactly.
It comes down to the racing. As long as I think Formula One's biggest problem is closing the gap to the front a little bit more. I mean, there's always going to be cars that are dominant. That's just the nature of the sport. There's always going to be periods of domination by specific teams for a period of time, particularly after a formula change. You know, there's always going to be, you know, like the year with the double diffuser, and all the double diffuser teams were just untouchable. It's going to happen, but I do feel that that's a bigger detriment to the sport than what power units are being used.
I agree. I think when you look back at old F1 races, I think, and maybe computer games actually, and just the general like social media, I must have everything now mentality, and that's general. perception of the world, is like you look back at an F1 race, and now that DRS is in general being a little bit more curbed, and overtakes feel a bit more real again as opposed to being faked. For me, when you look back at old F1 races and you get like 3 overtakes in a race and the whole of the broadcast just focuses on the lead 2 cars going round on their own when there's great battles going on behind, actually F1 ain't bad at all. It's popular to bitch, and it's popular to point fingers at things rather than actually appreciate all the things that are great about F1 at the moment.
I will agree with you on that, absolutely. Although, what I would say is that as someone who's recently watched the 96, 97, 98 seasons through, I was surprised that my memory had failed me a little bit regarding the standings of the cars and actually how shaken up the grids could get at certain events. You know, that's something that we don't see these days, I will concede. But
No. I agree.
I'm coming for you, Fernando. I want that point.
FSTF1, aren't you still happy about the great noise and the racing? Do the rose tinted glasses fit?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I can't look at it at the minute whilst I'm in Zagorna's because that's quite a long one, but I think someone's referring to, there's like a video where someone's going around basically pointing out that actually when you used to go to races and you'd have to put on earmuffs and your ears would actually hurt, and sometimes actually it wasn't quite so nice to be there. So sometimes rose tinted glasses are always a bit... FSTF1, whoever that is they're referring to.
No, I do agree.
Ooh, ice cream van.
Don't get too distracted now, Simon. You're in chance of points here, mate.
Exactly. I wanted to make a Kimmy joke, but then I forgot.
So, you know, I mean, there is a lot to be happy about, I think. I think Liberty Media's discussion on the future of F1 broadcasting also will play a part. I saw the other day that they're considering all kinds of options, so whether it's a move back to free-to-air TV mandatorily, or if they want to commit to paywall, or he was talking quite openly about the idea of streaming the events and controlling the broadcast themselves, which I, for one, would love. I'd buy a season ticket for Formula One to watch, you know, FOM streaming of the event, provided that there was no international restrictions, so I could watch it in English in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be the best thing for them. I don't see... I think they'd probably make more money charging a nominal fee to stream F1 on all your devices than they get by selling TV rights to companies that bury the coverage behind a paywall.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if I was in the UK, I wouldn't have Sky Sports F1.
Theatre, but it's a Brazilian trying to be funny over F1 races.
Yes, I know who you mean now, sorry, the person that was saying that. Yeah, I've seen that YouTube channel. He's not funny at all, but sometimes you need to watch it for the retro stuff because he's got stuff you can't see elsewhere. Yeah, I guess... So for me, having F1 on its own as a I've got to pay for this is less appealing than if F2 and GP3 came with it as a package.
That's a very good point. Actually, wouldn't that be in the sports benefit as well? Actually, or the FIA's benefit, because it would draw more eyes. It would draw more eyes, surely, to like the F2 races and so on.
Exactly, because I mean I'm a massive fan of Formula 2 and GP3. I think actually I'm more entertained quite often, even like in current days, with the races that are going on there compared to some of the stuff that's going on elsewhere in Formula 1 and stuff like that, because they're just crazy ass races all the time, and it's not because of crashes that what the F1 loves to stick up. There's some amazing overtakes and proper good battles going on as well. It's just that sometimes someone's always doing a dirt brain accident well, not always. There is someone called Sergio Canamassas who is Pastor Maldonado times two. But, like,
Do you
him
know, though,
aside,
I just wanted to interject there about Pastor Maldonado, because no one loves to mock Pastor as much as me. But I was actually looking into him the other day,
yeah,
and he actually had a very respectable record prior to F1.
yeah, yeah.
So your boy there that you're talking about, he's more Pastor Maldonado than Pastor Maldonado, because Pastor wasn't a crash machine prior to his F1 career, at least not on the same level.
No, not at all. Not at all. He was fine.
What's your fastest laps, Squire?
Bear with me, I was being lens flared to death. 128.703.
128.361.
Hey, nice.
But I've had a lot of clean air this Grand Prix, a lot of clean air. Right, I've got 3 laps to catch and overtake Sainz, and then I will consider this to be a hell of a recovery drive.
Where
Okay,
are you?
I'm 9th.
Oh, superb.
Sorry, no, 10th even. But I'm going to be 9th. I was getting ahead of myself. All right, Elias, thanks for joining, mate. It was a pleasure to have you, and thanks for your questions.
Level of competition was low enough in GP2 that any clean race Maldonado had was a win or not.
And it is very popular to bash the lower formula, and I enjoy that. And actually, I think if you package them together as a package deal for broadcasting and like pay and stuff like that, for me, that cements a little bit more F2 and GP3's history as the preferred way to get into Formula One, because that's also a bit of a weird way of doing things, because you've got Formula 3.5 at the minute going round, where Lando Norris is at the minute, and he's being touted as a future person. He's winning all of that. Verstappen came from there, Ocon came from there, and that grid in 2 years has gone from 35 drivers the year after Verstappen got promoted, where everyone was like, oh quick, let's go here. Then the point system has come in for the super license. Now there's only 19 or 20.
Oh, that's a shame.
The racing, yeah, but the racing is still good. Then you've got the one, I'm going to say Formula Renault 3. No, it's not. What is it called? It's annoyingly, they live stream it on YouTube and it's blocked in the UK. What was the point of doing that? Where Delatraz's son and Panis's son used to race, but there's only like 11 people racing in that now because it's got such little points on the scale spectrum. So everyone's like, well, this is pointless to race here now.
That was a bad overtake.
Because I can't
I
progress.
completed it.
So there needs to be like a bit of a package these together as a bundle deal. Everyone gets to see that the junior categories have their own opinions. Then when people come into the sport, like Lance Stroll, who have done well in junior categories and yes may have a massive daddy balance, it won't be daddy's balance that overrules the thing. People will be a bit more familiar to names, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think
you
that's...
also get to see. Sorry, last quick point. How, like Force India have got like their junior drivers coming up through the ranks and stuff like that. Not just your Ferrari and Red Bull leverage drivers, because they are kicking about and they are doing very well. So it's interesting.
No, I was going to say, you make an excellent point there. It's very, very true that I think a lot of young drivers have the problem that they're not exposed to the wider mass F1 audience prior to coming to F1, so it's very easy to downplay them.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think actually you're right, there's a lot of benefit to, bundling together the junior formula with F1 viewing, and sort of, particularly on mobile devices, you can send someone a push notification saying, hey, there's an F2 race on right now.
Yeah.
And, once they're in charge of the programming, they could also do a highlight show. Have essentially a vodcast or something and take a look at like the best overtakes across the formulae this week.
Yeah.
And that would enable more eyes to be on, look how exciting the racing is in F3 or F2.
Yeah.
You know, I love that idea. I love that idea. You've also touched on
Communication.
another key point actually, which is about driver development, young drivers, and so on. I think that is a scenario under which we could expand the F1 grid. There's been a lot of team owners recently discussing Minardi with misty eyes, and
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was. It might have been Gunter Steiner actually was saying
It
that
was.
teams could look to make revenue by developing drivers, which is a strange thing for someone reluctant to do that to say.
Tom has already got this formula down with their junior categories having gained exposure for many years.
Yeah, I agree. MotoGP does it right.
Yeah, I believe their ladder is very strong, isn't it?
Hmm.
Well, that was a recovery drive.
I'm impressed, mate.
Woo! I actually felt I drove pretty well there. There was a few shaky moments, but
All these faces on these drivers look fucking evil.
have you noticed how your on career mode, Emma Jenkins, your manager, looks like an animatronic robot?
She's got those eyes that pierce into your soul and rip you apart. She's
But
scary.
but it's
She's
also
also
the
proper angry.
it's also the way her lips move, but not her teeth.
Yeah. She is a sex doll you never want.
Well, you've got an 8-point lead in after round one, but I have to say I thought I was going to come out of this with 0 points. So very fucking pleased with that as an outcome.
You did good. You did good. Let's have a wee look. Who else was exciting there? Palmer actually going up the grid. What? Oh, good. I'm glad that Lance Stroll, after his ridiculous qualifying, ends up 16th.
Yeah.
But it looks like 2 stops wasn't necessarily the right way to go. 1 stoppers seemed to have done a bit better in general.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Except the cars that are ridiculously faster than everything around them, of course. The Ferraris and how
Yeah.
on. I was pleased to see. A part of me thought, because I hadn't been keeping tabs on you, part of me thought I was about to see you on the podium, and I would have had to vomit in my mouth a little bit out of shame. But you didn't. You didn't let us down. You didn't let us down too much.
No, not at all.
And we both improved on our starting positions, so that's good. I have to say, I don't feel as nervous anymore as I did coming into the season, because I actually thought the gap between us would be really large.
No, not at all.
But it seems that we're quite closely matched, actually, and incidents pending, I imagine we probably would have finished quite close together.
Yeah, because what, you lose about 25-30 seconds in a pit stop, we would have been nose to tail. I think actually over a single lap you have the legs on me. Maybe because I've had the chance of doing a couple of longer races, I'm a smidgy bit more consistent at the minute. But yeah, this is exciting going forward to the future races.
So,
It'll be good.
not bad for a first episode. We didn't cover all the topics I had, but for a first live episode, nothing went horrifically wrong. We stayed largely on topic. I thought we had some good talk, with some good stuff coming out of it. We're slowly fixing the sport.
We are. One rule at a time, we will fix Formula One, and delightful to have people coming along and join us and add in some comments along the way.
Yeah, I am loving the fact that being live, we can have a bit of interaction with people, get people's thoughts while we're actually on the air. You and I are back in 2 weeks for round 2.
So this is a fortnightly on a Saturday at 4 p.m. UK time. I think, are we going to stick to that time? Do you think?
Yeah, it works. It works for me. If it works for you and everybody else, then why not?
Yeah. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time, and then we'll have had the Belgian Grand Prix by then. Last thought, I guess. Who do you think will win tomorrow?
Ah, that is an excellent question. To be honest, I think Lewis has got it in the bag, because that pacing qualifying that he pulled out, insane. I don't think that was going to make it easy for him. And I know there is talk that Ferrari's long run pace is actually superior, but I don't know. I just get the feeling that even though the Ferrari is a better car on more days of the week, in my opinion, across a wider spectrum of operating conditions, I can't see past Lewis, actually. I think what's more interesting is who will take the last position on the podium, whether it will be Raikkonen or Bottas. And I'm hard pressed to say which it would be. Part of me thinks it will be Kimi, actually.
Yeah, I think, and I think, I'm going to be boring and agree. I think Hamilton's got the race in the bag. But I think La Source and Lecom on lap 1 potentially could be very, very spicy, and he'll only get it if they don't all smash wheels down there. Because I'm predicting there's a potential here for a dive bomb and an overflowing of emotion from Vettel, I think.
True.
And with that, I think Raikkonen will get a win.
I'm going to make another prediction here. I'm going to say that there's going to be some McLaren points happening.
Yeah. I think McLaren points will happen. And I'm going to be bold. I'm going to say it. And you can all laugh at me next episode. Palmer will score. If he finishes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he has potential to score. I could actually see a double points finish for Renault, provided that the reliability holds, but I don't think it will. No. I could also arguably see a double McLaren points, strangely. I actually could. And considering it's such a speed-dependent track, that's saying a lot. But I could see it. I think Force India are looking a bit shakier than they have done recently. And
Williams
also
are nowhere.
Williams are nowhere. I don't think Haas really are in a position to challenge. Toro Rosso seem off the pace. So really, if we lose a Red Bull,
okay.
If we were to lose a Red Bull or we were to lose a Renault, I think we'd be looking at 4 points for Force India and McLaren, which would be good. I think it would be good for the sport. I'm really happy to see McLaren and Renault on the comeback trail. You and I actually called this with Renault. We said last year that this year they will be regular points challengers because it's Renault. They always get there in the end.
Circle of their life, isn't it?
Yeah, and I see them as championship contenders within a few years. Historically, it's always repeated itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway,
and we're equal with Red Bull on the constructors.
I haven't seen that.
As a final note to leave us on.
Oh, look at us in fourth, the arseholes.
Equal third. Let's go with that. Oh, mind you, they get fourth because they had Ricardo ahead of us. So yeah, fabulous. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching.
Yeah, guys, thanks for joining us. Yeah, we'll see you in a fortnight. You guys take care. What are you doing this week, Simon? They can catch you with all your business, no?
Yeah, so over on this channel, if you're subscribing on YouTube, I've got... no, vomit in the mouth for the subscribe word. So there'll be more F1 2017 stuff because I'm determined to get out some stuff around the classic cars and playing around with that. Some of my career mode. And also, my copy of... This is totally for me. Everybody's Golf comes out on Tuesday on the PS4. I love that series. The cutest golf game ever. But somehow Amazon accidentally dispatched it 5 days early. So it's arrived. So I'm going to be playing that tomorrow and Monday on my channel. Apart from the usual shenanigan. How about yourself?
Superb. It's going to be all F1 all the time. Grand Prix World is back this week over on YouTube. Same name over on YouTube. But Twitch is going to be my regular home, I think. I think it's working out for me quite well. So I'm planning, ideally this weekend, so probably tomorrow, to do Q1, 2 and 3 and the race for round 1 of my McLaren career, which is on a harder difficulty than we do here, and I think I'll be lucky to qualify in 17th, so please do join me for that if that grabs your interest at all. And over the course of the week, I'm planning a stream maybe Wednesday, probably Wednesday afternoon, and next weekend as well. There'll be some streamy type shenanigans, usually F1 2017, Motorsport Manager and F1 Grand Prix World will also play their part, but F1 2017 is going to be my focus because I really want to get through the whole career mode, and like Simon, I want to take a look at the classic cars as well. So thank you to everyone who dropped in, anyone who's watching the VOD after the fact, and everyone who's over on Simon's stream. It's fantastic to have you all with us and to have some live feedback and interaction. We will see you in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah,
Brofist.
Bye for now.
I'm not. I pressed the wrong button. I always do this. There we go.